was one of those days when the sun felt like it was trying to melt everything in sight, the kind of heat that made even breathing feel like a chore. Raymond, a mechanic with calloused hands and grease-streaked overalls, had just finished fixing an old sedan at his small garage when his phone buzzed. He wiped his forehead with the back of his hand and glanced at the screen. It was a number he didn't recognize, but something told him to pick up. "Hello?" he said, his voice rough from years of yelling over engine noise. On the other end, a panicked assistant stammered through an explanation. A billionaire's private jet had broken down at a nearby airport. They needed someone, anyone, who could fix it fast. The plane was supposed to leave within hours, and if it didn't, millions of dollars worth of deals would collapse. The assistant begged Raymond to come immediately, promising to pay whatever it took. Raymond hesitated for a moment. Fixing cars was his thing. Planes weren't exactly his area of expertise. But then again, engines were engines, right? And besides, he'd always been the kind of guy who couldn't say no to a challenge. So after grabbing his toolbox and throwing on a fresh shirt, well, as fresh as you can get when your wardrobe mostly consists of oil-splattered clothes, he hopped into his beat-up truck and headed to the airport. When he arrived, the scene was chaos. Ground crew members rushed around like ants whose hill had been kicked over. Suitcases were scattered everywhere. Pilots paced anxiously, and in the middle of it all stood the billionaire himself, a tall, sharply dressed man with an air of authority that seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room. His face was tense, his jaw clenched tight, and every few seconds he checked his watch or barked instructions into his phone. The jet loomed behind him, sleek and shiny, looking more like a spaceship than an airplane. Raymond took a deep breath and walked toward the group. Someone pointed him out to the billionaire, who gave him a quick once-over. There was skepticism in his eyes. He probably expected someone younger, fancier, maybe wearing a suit instead of dusty work boots. But time was running out, and desperate times called for desperate measures. "What's wrong with it?" Raymond asked, cutting straight to the point. One of the ground crew handed him a clipboard with some technical jargon scrawled on it. Raymond skimmed through it, nodding occasionally, though most of what they were saying went over his head. Still, he trusted his instincts. After decades of working on all kinds of vehicles, he'd learned to listen to the machines themselves, rather than the people explaining their problems. He climbed up the steps into the jet's cabin, ignoring the stares of the staff. Inside, the luxury hit him like a wave. Plush leather seats, polished wood finishes, and gadgets he'd never seen before surrounded him. For a second, he forgot why he was there, and just marveled at how different this world was from his own. Then reality snapped back into focus. Somewhere beneath all this extravagance was a busted fuel line, and it was his job to find it. Back outside under the blazing sun, Raymond popped open panels and started inspecting the jet's innards. Sweat dripped down his neck as he worked, methodically, checking connections, tracing lines, and testing components. Hours passed and the pressure mounted. Every now and then, the billionaire would appear, asking if he was close to finding the problem. Each time, Raymond gave the same answer: "I'm working on it." Finally, after what felt like forever, he found the culprit, a tiny piece of debris lodged in the fuel system. It wasn't anything major, but it was enough to bring the entire operation to a standstill. With steady hands, Raymond removed the blockage, cleaned the affected parts, and reassembled everything. When he turned the engine back on, the hum was smooth and steady. The jet was ready to fly. The relief on everyone's faces was palpable. Pilots patted him on the back, assistants breathed sighs of relief, and even the billionaire cracked a small smile. Just as Raymond was packing up his tools, planning to slip away unnoticed, the billionaire stopped him. "You," he said, pointing directly at Raymond. "Come with me." Raymond froze for a moment, unsure of what to expect. Was he in trouble? Had he missed something? Curiosity outweighed fear, so he followed the billionaire onto the plane. As they stepped inside, the contrast between Raymond's gritty, hard-working life and the billionaire's polished, high-flying existence couldn't have been clearer. Yet somehow, in that moment, neither man seemed to care about the differences. All that mattered was the connection forged by solving a problem together. Little did they know, this chance encounter would set off a chain of events neither of them could have predicted. The inside of the jet was unlike anything Raymond had ever seen. Soft leather seats gleamed under the dim cabin lights, and the air smelled faintly of something expensive, maybe cologne or polished wood. He felt out of place, his hands still, dirty from working on the engine, his boots scuffed and worn. But he didn't have time to dwell on it. The billionaire led him straight to a small office tucked at the back of the plane, shutting the door behind them. "Sit," the man said, gesturing toward a chair. His tone wasn't harsh, but there was an edge to it, a mix of curiosity and authority that made Raymond hesitate for a second before sitting down. Across from him, the billionaire leaned against the desk, arms crossed, studying him like he was trying to solve a puzzle. "You fixed my jet," the billionaire said finally, breaking the silence. It wasn't a question, but Raymond nodded anyway. Most people would have panicked. Or worse, given me excuses about how impossible it was. "You didn't do either," Raymond shrugged, feeling awkward under the intense gaze. "It's what I do," he replied simply. "Engines break. I fix 'em. Doesn't matter whose they are." The billionaire raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "You don't seem impressed by all this." He waved a hand around the luxurious cabin. "Most folks would be starstruck." Raymond chuckled softly. "I've got 2 kids and a mortgage. Starstruck doesn't pay bills." For a split second, the billionaire looked surprised. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a short, sharp sound that seemed almost foreign coming from him. "Fair enough," he said. "Tell me about yourself. How'd you end up fixing planes when you're not even part of my team?" And just like that, the conversation shifted. At first, Raymond wasn't sure what to say. Talking about himself wasn't something he did often, but as the jet soared through the clouds, he found himself opening up. He told the billionaire about growing up in a working-class neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, but dreams were plenty. About how he'd spent his childhood taking apart old radios and bicycles, figuring out how things worked. About the long hours he'd put in at garages, earning respect one repair at a time. The billionaire listened intently, nodding occasionally. There was no judgment in his eyes, only interest. When Raymond finished, the man leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers against the armrest. "You know," he said slowly, "I've met a lot of people in my life, engineers, CEOs, inventors. But none of them have your practicality, your ability to just get things done without overthinking it." Raymond frowned, unsure if that was a compliment or not. "Thanks, I guess." "It is a compliment," the billionaire replied firmly. "Listen, I need people like you, people who can handle pressure, think on their feet, and deliver results. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. I want you to stay in touch. We might have more work for you soon." Raymond blinked, caught off guard. "More work? Like what?" The billionaire smiled faintly, though there was something calculating behind it. "Let's just say I have projects that require someone with your skill set, someone who doesn't fold under pressure. If you're interested, we'll talk details later." Before Raymond could respond, the intercom crackled, announcing their descent into Dubai. The billionaire stood up, smoothing his suit jacket. "Think about it," he said, extending a hand. "You won't regret it." Raymond shook the offered hand, still processing everything that had just happened. A few minutes ago, he'd been a mechanic sweating under the Georgia sun. Now he was sitting on a private jet, being offered opportunities he never imagined possible. As the plane touched down and the billionaire disappeared into the crowd of assistants waiting outside, Raymond couldn't help but wonder, what exactly had he gotten himself into? Over the next few days, Raymond tried to go back to his normal routine. He fixed cars, changed oil filters, and joked with customers at his garage. But the billionaire's words kept replaying in his mind. Stay in touch, more work, opportunities. It sounded exciting, but also overwhelming. Was he really cut out for whatever world the billionaire wanted to pull him into? Then came the call. The billionaire's assistant reached out, asking if Raymond could come to a downtown skyscraper for a meeting. Nervously, Raymond agreed. When he arrived, the building's lobby was bustling with activity. Men in tailored suits, women typing furiously on laptops, security guards standing stiffly by the doors. He felt like a fish out of water, clutching his toolbox like a lifeline. The meeting turned out to be less formal than he expected. The billionaire greeted him warmly, leading him to a conference room filled with blueprints and prototypes. "We've got a problem," the billionaire explained. "One of our elevators keeps malfunctioning. My engineers can't figure it out. Can you take a look?" Raymond hesitated. Elevators weren't exactly his specialty, but he figured the principles were similar to cars and planes. "Sure," he said. "I'll give it a shot." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Raymond spent hours examining the elevator's mechanisms, tracing wires and testing components. Eventually, he discovered a faulty sensor causing the issue. With a few adjustments, the elevator was running smoothly again. The billionaire watched silently from the sidelines, his expression unreadable. When Raymond finished, the billionaire approached him, clapping him on the shoulder. "You're good," he said simply. "Really good. I knew I made the right call bringing you in." From that day forward, Raymond became the go-to guy for the billionaire's toughest problems. Whether it was fixing luxury cars, troubleshooting, high-tech equipment, or even helping plan logistics for events, Raymond proved time and again that he could handle anything thrown his way. Each task brought new challenges, but also new confidence. For the first time in his life, Raymond felt like he was stepping into a world where his skills truly mattered, not just to keep engines running, but to make big things happen. But as much as Raymond enjoyed the work, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Every project led to another. Every success opened a new door. And while the billionaire seemed grateful for Raymond's contributions, there was always a lingering sense that he had bigger plans in mind, plans that would change both their lives forever. As weeks turned into months, Raymond found himself spending more and more time working for the billionaire. At first, it was small jobs, fixing a broken-down sports car in the man's private garage or troubleshooting a glitch in one of his office building's security systems. But soon, the requests grew bigger and more complex. The billionaire had a knack for throwing challenges at Raymond that seemed impossible at first glance, but somehow always ended up being within his reach. One day, the billionaire called Raymond to a massive warehouse on the outskirts of the city. When Raymond arrived, he was greeted by rows upon rows of drones, sleek, futuristic machines designed to deliver supplies to disaster zones. The billionaire stood in the center of the room, looking both excited and frustrated. "These are supposed to save lives," the billionaire explained, gesturing toward the drones. "But they keep crashing mid-flight. My engineers can't figure out why. I need you to fix them." Raymond raised an eyebrow. Drones? He wasn't exactly an expert on flying machines, but engines were engines, right? If something was causing these drones to fail, there had to be a logical reason behind it. With a deep breath, he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let me take a look." For the next few weeks, Raymond dove headfirst into the project. He spent hours studying the drone's mechanics, reading technical manuals and running tests. He collaborated with the billionaire's team of engineers, asking questions and bouncing ideas off them. Slowly but surely, he began piecing together the problem. The drones weren't crashing because of faulty programming or design flaws. They were overheating. The engines simply couldn't handle the stress of long flights without proper cooling systems. Armed with this knowledge, Raymond got to work modifying the drones. He redesigned parts of their internal structure to improve airflow, installed better heat-resistant materials, and even added small fans to regulate temperature. It was painstaking work, but Raymond poured everything he had into it. For him, it wasn't just about fixing machines anymore. It was about proving to himself that he could rise to the occasion, no matter how tough the challenge. Finally, the day came to test the modified drones. The billionaire gathered his team in the warehouse, watching anxiously as one of the drones lifted off the ground. Everyone held their breath as it hovered steadily, then zipped across the room. After several minutes of flawless flight, the drone landed safely back on its platform. Cheers erupted from the team, and the billionaire clapped Raymond on the shoulder. "You did it," the billionaire said. his voice filled with genuine admiration. "These things are going to change the world, and you made it possible." Raymond smiled, feeling a surge of pride. For years he'd been told he was just a mechanic. But now, standing in that warehouse surrounded by cutting-edge technology, he realized he was so much more than that. He was a problem solver, a creator, someone who could take an idea and turn it into reality. Despite his growing success, not everyone was thrilled about Raymond's rise. Some of the Billionaire's senior staff resented him, whispering behind his back about how a garage guy didn't belong in their high-stakes world. They accused him of overstepping his boundaries, of trying to climb the ladder too quickly. Raymond tried to ignore the negativity, focusing instead on the work. But it wasn't easy. Every snide comment, every dismissive glance chipped away at his confidence. Things came to a head during a high-profile event hosted by the Billionaire. It was a glitzy affair, held in a grand ballroom filled with politicians, business leaders, and celebrities. Raymond played a key role in ensuring the event ran smoothly. He oversaw the setup of lighting rigs, sound systems, and backup generators. Everything went off without a hitch, earning praise from the Billionaire himself. But later that evening, while scrolling through social media, Raymond stumbled upon a news article about the event. In it, the Billionaire credited his brilliant team for the success of the evening but made no mention of Raymond's contributions. Watching the clip, Raymond felt a mix of anger and disappointment. He'd worked tirelessly to make sure everything was perfect, and yet, once again, he was invisible. The next morning, Raymond confronted the Billionaire in his office. "I saw the interview," he said bluntly. "You acted like I didn't exist." Billionaire looked surprised, then guilty. I didn't mean to," he stammered. "It's just, I'm used to taking credit for everything. I didn't think about how it would feel for you." Raymond crossed his arms, waiting for the man to continue. "I'm sorry," the Billionaire said finally. "You've done incredible work for me, and I shouldn't diminish that. Let's find a way to move forward, together." It was a rare moment of vulnerability from the usually stoic Billionaire. Raymond could see the sincerity in his eyes and decided to give him another chance. After all, their partnership wasn't just about business, it was about trust, respect, and mutual growth. Inspired by Raymond's talent and determination, the Billionaire proposed a bold idea: funding a community repair center where young people from underserved neighborhoods could learn valuable trade skills. Raymond's eyes lit up at the suggestion. This was something he'd dreamed of for years, a place where kids like him, who didn't have access to fancy schools or connections, could discover their potential. Together, they poured their energy into creating the center. Raymond designed the curriculum, blending traditional mechanical skills with lessons on modern technology. The Billionaire provided the resources, securing funding and equipment. Within months, Gearworks opened its doors, welcoming students eager to learn. Watching the center come to life filled Raymond with a sense of purpose he'd never experienced before. He wasn't just fixing machines anymore, he was changing lives. And for the first time, he felt like he truly belonged in the Billionaire's world. Not as an outsider looking in, but as an equal partner shaping the future. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of a journey that would redefine what success truly meant, for both of them. The opening of Gearworks was a turning point for Raymond. It wasn't just another project. It was his heart and soul poured into something bigger than himself. The Community Repair Center quickly became a hub of activity, buzzing with energy, from early morning until late at night. Kids streamed in, wide-eyed and curious, eager to get their hands dirty and learn how things worked. Some came because they loved tinkering with gadgets. Others came because it was their only chance to escape the struggles of their neighborhoods. Whatever the reason, Raymond welcomed them all with open arms. Every day at Gearworks felt like a new adventure. One moment, he'd be showing a group of teenagers how to rebuild an engine, explaining each step with patience and care. The next, he'd be helping a shy kid solder wires for the first time, cheering them on as sparks flew and connections were made. Not just in circuits, but in confidence. Raymond saw himself in these kids. He remembered what it was like to feel invisible, to doubt whether anyone believed in him. But here in this space, no one was invisible. Everyone mattered. The billionaire visited often, sometimes unannounced, walking through the workshop with quiet admiration. He'd watch Raymond teach, observing how effortlessly he connected with the students. There was something about the way Raymond lit up when he talked about mechanics, about problem solving, that struck a chord with the man. He'd spent most of his life chasing profits and power, but here, surrounded by laughter and learning, he found a different kind of fulfillment. One afternoon, after a particularly lively session where a group of students successfully repaired an old motorcycle, the billionaire pulled Raymond aside. "You're wasted fixing planes," he said bluntly. "You should be running this place full-time." Raymond laughed, shaking his head. "I am running it full-time. That's why my garage is collecting dust these days." The billionaire smirked but pressed on. "What I mean is, you've got leadership written all over you. This isn't just a repair shop anymore, it's a movement. You're creating opportunities for people who wouldn't have had them otherwise. Don't sell yourself short." For the first time in years, Raymond allowed himself to dream bigger. Maybe this was his calling, not just fixing machines, but fixing lives. Still, he couldn't help but wonder if he was biting off more than he could chew. Running Gearworks meant navigating challenges he'd never faced before. Budgets, partnerships, politics. It was a far cry from the simplicity of turning a wrench or diagnosing an engine. But even as Gearworks flourished, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Some of the billionaire's top executives grew increasingly resentful of Raymond's growing influence. They whispered among themselves, questioning why a mechanic deserved so much attention. "He's just a grease monkey," one of them muttered during a meeting. "Why does he get special treatment?" Their comments eventually reached Raymond, though he tried not to let them bother him. After all, he knew what he was capable of. But the negativity wore on him, gnawing at his confidence. Were they right? Did he really belong in this world? Things came to a head during a corporate event hosted by the billionaire. The room was packed with investors, journalists, and industry leaders, all eager to hear the latest updates from the company. When it was time for speeches, the billionaire took the stage, praising the success of recent projects, including Gearworks. But instead of giving Raymond credit, he glossed over his contributions, referring to the center as one of our initiatives, without mentioning its founder by name. Sitting in the audience, Raymond felt a familiar sting of disappointment. He'd worked tirelessly to build Gearworks, pouring every ounce of his passion and expertise into making it a reality. Yet once again, he was relegated to the shadows. As applause filled the room, he slipped out quietly, unable to stomach the hollow praise. Later that evening, the billionaire found Raymond sitting alone in the parking lot, staring at the city skyline. "I saw your face during the speech," the man said, sitting down beside him. "I messed up, didn't I?" Raymond sighed, rubbing his temples. "You did." Again, the billionaire nodded, guilt etched across his features. "I keep forgetting how much this means to you. To me, it's just another project. But for you, it's everything." "It's not just about me," Raymond replied, his voice firm. "It's about those kids back at the center. They need to know their work matters. If you don't believe in them, how can they believe in themselves?" The billionaire fell silent, letting the weight of Raymond's words sink in. For years, he'd measured success in dollars and deals, never stopping to consider the human impact of his actions. But now, looking at Raymond, the determination in his eyes, the calluses on his hands, he realized there was a deeper kind of wealth, the kind built on trust, respect, and shared purpose. "I'll make it right," the billionaire promised. "Starting tomorrow, Gearworks gets the spotlight it deserves. And you get the recognition you've earned." True to his word, the billionaire kept his promise. At the next major event, he invited Raymond to speak, giving him the platform to share his story and the mission of Gearworks. Standing on stage, microphone in hand, Raymond felt a surge of pride. He spoke about the importance of trade skills, about giving young people a chance to succeed, and about the power of believing in someone, even when the odds are stacked against. Them. As the crowd erupted in applause, Raymond glanced over at the billionaire, who gave him a subtle nod of approval. In that moment, their partnership shifted. It was no longer just about business or philanthropy. It was about equality. Two men from vastly different worlds, united by a shared vision of what the future could look like. With the billionaire's renewed support, Gearworks expanded rapidly. New workshops opened in other cities, offering training programs tailored to local needs. Raymond traveled frequently, mentoring instructors and meeting students whose lives were transformed by the program. Every success story fueled his drive to do more, to reach further. But despite his growing fame, Raymond remained grounded. He still carried his old toolbox everywhere he went, refusing to part with the symbol of his roots. And whenever stress threatened to overwhelm him, he returned to the basics, fixing cars, teaching classes, reminding himself why he started this journey in the first place. Through it all, his bond with the billionaire deepened. What began as a professional relationship evolved into a genuine friendship. Over meals and late-night conversations, they discovered common ground beyond their differences. Both had fought hard to achieve success, but neither had truly understood its cost until now. Together, they were redefining what it meant to lead, not by wielding power, but by empowering others. And as Gearworks continued to grow, touching countless lives along the way, Raymond knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just his story anymore. It was theirs, a testament to the idea that when two people come together with mutual respect and a shared goal, anything is possible, even changing the world, one repair at a time. As Gearworks continued to grow, it became more than just a repair center. It was a beacon of hope for communities that had long been overlooked. The students who walked through its doors weren't just learning how to fix engines or assemble drones. They were discovering their own potential. For many, it was the first time anyone had told them they could achieve something great. And at the heart of it all was Raymond, whose steady hands and unwavering belief in others kept the whole operation running smoothly. Every day brought new stories of transformation. There was the young girl who came in shy and unsure, too afraid to even pick up a wrench. By the end of her first month, she was confidently leading a team of classmates in rebuilding an old lawnmower. Then there was the teenager who'd been kicked out of school and labeled a lost cause. At Gearworks, he found purpose pouring his energy into mastering robotics. Within a year, he landed an internship with a tech company, thanks to the skills he'd learned under Raymond's guidance. These moments weren't just victories for the students, they were victories for Raymond too. Each success reminded him why he'd started this journey in the first place. It wasn't about fame or money, it was about giving people a chance to rewrite their futures. But as much as he loved seeing the kids thrive, running Gearworks wasn't without its challenges. Funding was always tight, supplies often ran low, and there were days when the weight of responsibility felt overwhelming. Still, Raymond refused to give up. He'd faced tougher odds before, and he knew the impact they were making was worth every struggle. The billionaire, meanwhile, began to change in ways neither of them had anticipated. Spending time at Gearworks gave him a fresh perspective on life. He'd spent decades chasing wealth and power, convinced that success was measured by boardroom victories and stock prices. But watching Raymond interact with the students, seeing the joy in their eyes as they solved problems or completed projects, he realized how empty those achievements felt in comparison. One evening, after a particularly inspiring session where a group of students successfully launched a prototype drone, the billionaire pulled Raymond aside. They stood outside the workshop, leaning against the railing as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "You've done something incredible here," the billionaire said, his voice softer than usual. "I used to think success meant building empires, but now I see it differently." Raymond raised an eyebrow, curious. "How so?" "It's not about what you build," the man replied. "It's about who you build it for. You've created something that actually matters, not just to me, but to these kids, their families, their communities. That's real success." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of machinery from inside the workshop filled the silence, mingling with the distant sounds of traffic and laughter. Finally, Raymond nodded. It's not easy, though. Every step feels like climbing a mountain. Sometimes I wonder if we're doing enough, the billionaire chuckled dryly. Welcome to my world. Doubt never goes away. It just changes shape. But look around you, Raymond. Look at what you've built. You're changing lives. That's more than most people can say. His words lingered in Raymond's mind long after the conversation ended. For years he'd doubted himself, wondering if he truly belonged in the billionaire's orbit. But now, standing shoulder to shoulder with a man who once seemed untouchable, he realized they were more alike than he'd ever imagined. Both had fought hard to get where they were. Both carried scars from battles won and lost, and both understood the value of second chances. As Gearworks expanded into new cities, Raymond found himself traveling more frequently. He visited workshops across the country, meeting instructors and students, sharing stories and troubleshooting issues. It was exhausting work, but it also reignited his passion for teaching. Seeing the ripple effect of what he'd started, the way one center inspired another, then another, filled him with a sense of pride he couldn't put into words. But not everyone welcomed the expansion. In some places, local leaders resisted the idea of a charity project coming into their neighborhoods. They accused Raymond and the billionaire of trying to impose their vision on communities that didn't ask for it. At first, these accusations stung. Raymond had poured his heart into Gearworks, believing he was helping people. Hearing that some viewed his efforts as intrusive made him question whether he was overstepping. Determined to address the concerns, Raymond decided to take a different approach. Instead of simply opening new centers, he began holding town hall meetings in each community. He listened to residents' fears, hopes, and dreams, incorporating their feedback into the planning process. Slowly but surely, resistance turned into collaboration. Local businesses donated tools and materials, parents volunteered to help supervise classes, and former skeptics became advocates for the program. Through it all, the billionaire remained a steadfast supporter. Though he rarely attended the town halls or public events, he worked tirelessly behind the scenes, securing funding, negotiating partnerships, and ensuring that Gasserworks had the resources it needed to thrive. His involvement wasn't flashy or self-promotional. It was quiet, steady, and deeply impactful. Back home, Raymond's family noticed a shift in him. His wife teased him about how much gray had crept into his hair, but she also marveled at the spark in his eyes. "You're happier than I've seen you in years," she said one night over dinner. "What's different?" Raymond thought about it for a moment. "I guess I finally feel like I'm doing something meaningful. Like I'm leaving a mark that'll last longer than me." His oldest son chimed in, grinning. "Yeah, Dad. You're basically a superhero now." They laughed, but there was truth in the joke. To the kids at Gearworks, Raymond was a hero, a man who believed in them when no one else did, who showed them that hard work and determination could open doors they never knew existed. And while Raymond would never call himself a hero, he couldn't deny the impact he was having. As the years passed, Gearworks became a household name, celebrated not just for its innovative programs, but for the lives it transformed. Politicians praised it as a model for community development. Journalists wrote glowing articles about its success. Even Hollywood came calling, wanting to turn Raymond's story into a movie. But through it all, Raymond stayed grounded. He still drove his beat-up truck, still wore his grease-stained overalls, and still carried his trusty toolbox wherever he went. One day, during a visit to a newly opened center, a student approached him with a question. "Mr. Raymond, do you ever get scared? Like, what if everything falls apart?" Raymond smiled, remembering all the times he'd asked himself the same thing. "Of course I do," he admitted. "But fear doesn't stop me. It reminds me why I'm doing this. To prove that we're stronger than our doubts, smarter than our mistakes, and capable of more than we ever imagined." The student nodded, soaking in his words. Moments like these reminded Raymond why he kept pushing forward, even when the road got rough. Because every kid who walked through Gearworks' doors deserved to hear those words and to believe them. And somewhere along the way, Raymond realized he'd stopped doubting himself too. Years passed, and the world around Raymond and the billionaire changed in ways neither of them could have predicted. Technology advanced at lightning speed, industries evolved, and new challenges emerged. But through it all, Gearworks remained, a constant, a steady force for good in an ever-shifting landscape. What had started as a small repair center was now a nationwide network of workshops, training thousands of young people each year and creating opportunities where none had existed before. For Raymond, the journey felt surreal. He often found himself reflecting on how far he'd come, from fixing cars in a tiny garage to standing at the helm of a movement that touched lives across the country. The calloused hands that once turned wrenches now shook those of politicians, educators, and community leaders. Yet despite the accolades and recognition, Raymond never lost sight of what mattered most: the kids. Every time he walked into a workshop and saw their eager faces, he was reminded of why he started this in the first place. The billionaire, too, underwent a profound transformation. Once known for his ruthless pursuit of wealth, he became celebrated for his commitment to giving back. People began calling him a philanthropist, though he hated the label. "I'm just doing my part," he'd say whenever someone brought it up. And in many ways, it was true. His decision to fund Gearworks hadn't been about charity. It had been about partnership. Together, he and Raymond had built something bigger than either of them could have achieved alone. As retirement loomed closer, the billionaire made a surprising announcement. He called Raymond to his office one crisp autumn morning, handing him a thick folder filled with documents. "It's time," the man said simply. "I want you to take over." Raymond stared at him, stunned. "Take over what?" "Everything." The billionaire gestured to the papers. "My foundation, the resources, the connections, it's all yours. You've earned it." For a moment, Raymond couldn't speak. The weight of the offer hit him like a freight train. Running Gearworks was one thing, but taking responsibility for an entire organization? It was daunting, overwhelming even. But deep down he knew the billionaire was right. If anyone could carry the torch, it was him. "I'll need help," Raymond admitted finally. "This isn't something I can do alone." The billionaire smiled faintly. "You won't be alone. You've got your team, your students, and everyone who believes in what you're doing. Trust me, Raymond, you're ready." With that vote of confidence, Raymond stepped into his new role. It wasn't easy. There were sleepless nights, tough decisions, and moments when doubt crept in, but he faced every challenge head-on. The skills he'd honed over decades as a mechanic served him well: problem-solving, patience, and an unshakable determination to keep moving forward no matter what. Under his leadership, Gearworks reached new heights. Programs expanded to include coding, robotics, and renewable energy. Partnerships formed with schools, universities, and tech companies, offering students pathways to careers they'd never dreamed possible. Alumni of the program went on to become engineers, entrepreneurs, teachers, and innovators, carrying the spirit of Gearworks into every corner of society. One day, while visiting a newly opened center in a rural town, Raymond found himself standing in front of a crowd of students, parents, and local leaders. A banner hung behind him emblazoned with the words, "Empowering futures, transforming lives." As he looked out at the sea of hopeful faces, he felt a lump rise in his throat. "When I was your age," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I didn't think I'd amount to much. I grew up tinkering with old radios and bicycles, trying to figure out how things worked. Back then, I didn't know if anyone believed in me, or if I even believed in myself. But here's the thing. Belief is powerful. When someone takes a chance on you, when they tell you that you're capable of greatness, it changes everything." He paused, letting his words sink in. That's what Gearworks is all about. It's not just about teaching you how to fix engines or build drones. It's about showing you that you have value, that your dreams matter. And it's about proving that together, we can create a future where everyone has a fair shot. Tear. Applause that followed was thunderous, echoing through the room like a tidal wave. For Raymond, it wasn't just validation. It was proof that the work they were doing was making a difference. These kids weren't just participants. They were changemakers carrying the torch forward. In the years that followed, Raymond watched as the seeds he'd planted bore fruit. Former students returned to teach the next generation, bringing fresh ideas and perspectives. New centers popped up in underserved areas, funded by alumni who wanted to give back. Even the Billionaire, now fully retired, stayed involved, mentoring young entrepreneurs and advocating for policies that supported trade education. When Raymond finally decided to step down from his role, he did so knowing that Gearworks was in good hands. The foundation he and the Billionaire had built was strong enough to stand on its own, guided by the principles they'd instilled: hard work, humility, and a relentless belief in the power of human potential. On his last day, as he locked up the original workshop for the final time, Raymond took a moment to soak it all in. The smell of oil and metal still lingered in the air, a comforting reminder of where it all began. He glanced at his toolbox, sitting quietly in the corner, and smiled. It had been his constant companion through every twist and turn of this incredible journey. As he walked away, the sun setting behind him, Raymond felt a profound sense of peace. He hadn't set out to change the world, he'd simply wanted to fix things. But along the way, he discovered that sometimes the greatest repairs aren't done with tools. They're done with kindness, trust, and the unwavering belief that every person deserves a chance to shine. And in that moment, Raymond knew he'd left behind something truly lasting, not just a legacy of machines and mechanics, but of hope, resilience, and humanity.